Century X, English. To the enemy faith promised, shall not be kept, the prisoners shall be detained, the first taken, put to death, and the rest stripped, giving the remnant that they may be succored. Not. These words are plain, though the sense be a little intricate, and the contents being of small concernments, deserve no further explanation. English. The galley and the ship shall hide their sails, the great fleet shall make the little one to come out, 10 ships near hand, shall turn and push at it, the great being vanquished, they shall unite together. Not. These are some particularities of a sea fight between a great fleet and a small one, wherein he saith, that some had hid their sails, belike they were unwilling to come out of the harbour and to fight, but he saith, that the great fleet will compel the little one to come out, but 10 great ships will come to help the little fleet, and after the great one hath been overcome, will join themselves to the little fleet. English. After that, 5 shall not put out his flock, he'll let loose a runaway for Penelon, there shall be a false rumour, succour shall come then, the commander shall forsake the siege. Not. This stanza is either nonsensical or falsely printed, and what he meaneth by Penelon is utterly unknown. English. About midnight the leader of the army shall save himself, vanishing suddenly, 7 years after his fame shall not be blamed, and at his return he shall never say ye. Not. This is plain of a general of an army, who shall forsake his army, and save himself, and yet 7 years after when he cometh back, his reputation shall be as clear, as if he never had committed such an error. English. Albi Castres shall make a new league, 9 Arians, Lisbon, and Portuguese, Carcass. Thulaus shall make an end of their confederacy, when the new chief shall come from Lorgues. Not. Albi, Castres, Carcassonne, and Thulaus are cities of Languedoc, which our author saith, will enter into a confederacy among themselves, and join with Lisbon and the Portuguese, and this shall happen when the general of the army shall be one born in Lorgues, which is another of the same province. English. Gardon at Nimes, waters shall overflow so high, that they all think that Deucalion is born again, most of them will run into the Colossus, and a sepulchre, and fire extinguished, shall appear. Not. Near Nimes there is the river called Gardon, which cometh from St. Romans, and dischargeth itself into the Rosnat Beaucaire. There is to be seen in that city abundance of antiquities, which the Goths had built 1150. Years before, there is also many Roman antiquities, as an amphitheatre, so well builded that neither the Goths nor the Saracens, nor Attila, nor Charles Martel, with all their power, could not utterly demolish it. The author nameth it Colossus, because its building appeared like a colossus for solidity. There is also an ancient temple which is called the Fountain, builded as a quadrangle, and supported by 2 rows of great pillars, which at present is a church of nuns. This being supposed, the river of Gardon did overflow so much, that its waters joining with that of a flood that happened there the 9th of September 1557. Every one thought that Deucalion had been born again. The author saith this, because in the fables of the ancients, Deucalion is thought to be the author of the flood which Ovid mentioneth. During this flood, which was like to overflow the town, as well as the country, many did retire themselves into that amphitheatre. And in that ancient temple of the fountain, the waters overthrowing a great many old buildings did discover abundance of antiquities, and amongst the rest one of those lamps that burneth always, in the sepulchre of a vestal, which went out as soon as it felt the fresh air. In confirmation of this, the history of Provence saith, that the storm began about 5 of the clock in the morning, and lasted till 8 of the clock at night, and that these waters did uncover abundance of antiquities that were hidden 1100 years before, as pillars, porticos, medals, jasper stones, and serpentine stones, pieces of broken vessels, epitaphs, lodging rooms, and caves, and all other things that used to be found in the ruins of a palace. There was also heard in the air dogs barking, pillars of fire, armed men fighting, and were seen 2 suns in the clouds of the colour of blood, all which were the sad presages of the civil wars of France presently after, and chiefly that of Provence. The 9th century, in the 9th stanza, speaketh almost the same, and sheweth that Nimes shall perish by water. English. A great war is preparing at Nancy, the Emathian shall say I submit to all, the British island shall be put in care by salt and wine, hem. Me, too fi. Shall not keep Metz long. Not. Nancy is the chief city of Lorraine, and by the Emathian is understood the French, the British Isle is England, which is said here, shall come into great distress by salt and wine, because the Count Ray aboundeth in those two commodities. The last verse I do not understand, save that Metz is a great city in Lorraine. English. Index and pulse shall break the forehead of the son of the Earl of Senegalia, the Murnemy by many at a full bout, 3 within 7 days shall be wounded to death. Not. Senegalia is a town in Italy. All what can be gathered out of the obscurity of this stanza is, that the son of the earl of that town shall have his forehead broken, and within 7 days after, 3 more shall be wounded to death. English. Out of Castellan-Figueres upon a misty day, from an infamous woman shall be born a sovereign prince, his surname shall be from breeches, himself a posthume, never a king was worse in his province. Not. Castellan-Figueres is a petty town in Provence, in which he saith that a sovereign prince shall be born of an infamous woman, and shall be a posthume, which in Latine signifieth one that is born after his father's death. He saith also that his name shall be derived from breeches, and that never a king was worse in his country, whether by worse, he meaneth in manners or fortune, I know not. English. Endeavor of murder, enormous adulteries, a great enemy of all mankind, that shall be worse than grandfather, uncle, or father, in iron, fire, water, bloody and inhumane. Not. This stanza, as well as the next, hath relation to the precedent, making mention what a wicked person shall that posthume be of which he spoke before. English. Below Joncher's dangerous passage, the posthume shall cause his army to go over, and his baggage to go over the Pyrenean mountains, a duke shall run from Perpignan to Tenda. Not. This is still concerning the same posthume or bastard, who shall cause his army to pass at Joncher, and his baggage to go over the Pyrenean mountains, which part Spain from France, and that upon the fear of him a duke shall run from Perpignan, which is the chief city of Roussillon, to Tenda, which is a little town in Provence. English. Elected for a pope, from elected shall be baffled, upon a sudden, moved quick and fearful, by too much sweetness provoked to die, his fear being out in the night shall be leader to his death. Not. This prophecy was fulfilled in the person of the Cardinal Santa Severina, who in the conclave of cardinals, after the death of Pope Innocent IX, was elected pope, and presently after was baffled by the same cardinals, and Clement VIII chosen in his place, for which the other a little while after died for grief. English. Under the pasture of beasts chewing the cud, conducted by them to the herbipolite belly, soldiers hidden, the weapons making a noise, shall be attempted not far from Antipolic city. Not. The sense of this is, that some soldiers disguised like herdsmen, shall lead oxen into a place where were hidden before weapons in the grass, but the weapons making a noise by their clashing they shall be discovered, not far from a place that he calleth here Antipolique, purposely to rhyme with herbipolique in French, which word herbipolique signifieth a town of pasture. English. Ernal, vassal, without advice of his own, stout and fearful, by fear taken and overcome, pale, and in company of many horrors, shall be convicted at Barcelona by the Charterhouse. Not. This stanza is an horoscope, which the author made upon that gentleman named Ernal Vasil, and signifieth that the said man should find himself in such perplexity that he could not be able to take advice what to do, and that fear should make him hide himself, to be apprehended, in a place where he should be taken. When he was taken, he was presently convicted of those crimes that he was accused of, therefore the officers of justice did conduct him to the Charterhouse of Barcelona, which is 4 miles from the said town, in a place called Campo Alegre, for the beauty and situation of it. To that place many whores did accompany him to receive the punishment they had deserved, therefore the author saith that he went thither pale, as foreseeing the terror of the punishment he was to undergo. English. A father duke, aged and very thirsty, in his extremity, his son denying him the ewer, alive into a well, where he shall be drowned, for which the senate shall give the son a long and easy death. Not. It is a duke very aged, who shall die of a dropsy, or of some other burning disease, which will make him very thirsty. The physician shall forbid any water to be given him, therefore this duke shall press his son very much to give him the ewer, that he may drink his fill, but his son refusing, the father shall fall into such a rage, that being alone he will go and throw himself into a well, where he shall be drowned. This unhappy death will be the cause of much murmuring, and the Senate or Parliament of that place will make inquiry after it, by which inquiry the son will be found guilty, therefore for his punishment he shall be condemned to a long and easy death, as to live all his days in some monastery. English. Happy in the kingdom of France, happy in his life, ignorant of blood, death, fury, of taking by force, by no flatterers shall be envied, king robbed, too much faith in kitchen. Not. This is a prognostication of a king of France, who though happy in his reign and life, and being given to no great vices, as blood, fury, or taking by force, yet shall be much envied and robbed by his subjects, and chiefly by those he trusteth about his kitchen. English. Queen Ergaste seeing her daughter pale, by a regret contained in her breast, then shall great cries come out of Anglism, and the marriage shall be denied to the cousin german. Not. It is unknown what queen he meaneth by the name of Ergaste, the rest is easy. Anglism is a city of Gascony or Languedoc. English. The house of Lorraine shall give place to Vendôme, the high pulled down, the low raised up, the son of Hammond shall be elected into Rome, and the two great ones shall not appear. Not. The two first verses of this prophecy were fulfilled in the time of Henry III, King of France, in whose time the Duke of Guise and House of Lorraine were grown so powerful in France, that they drove the king from Paris, and assumed themselves a rank and authority over the princes of the blood, so that the king was forced to cause them to be slain, after which Henry IV, who was King of Navarre and Duke of Vendôme, took his place again as first prince of the blood. The two last verses are too obscure to be interpreted, and I believe were only forced by our author to make up his rhyme, as he hath done in several other places. English. The day that she shall be saluted queen, the next day after the evening prayer, all accompts being summoned and cast up, she that was humble before, never was one so proud. Not. It is a woman, belike of a small fortune, who coming to be a queen by her humility, the next day after evening prayer she shall appear so proud, as the like was never seen. English. All the friends that shall have taken the part of the unlearned, put to death and robbed, goods sold publicly by proclamation, a great man seized of them, never Roman people was so much abused. Not. The sense of this is, that a great man that took part with all those that were unlearned shall be put to death, and their goods praised and sold publicly, upon which goods another great man shall seize, and this is to be done in Rome. There is fault in the impression of the third French verse, for instead of Fix it must be Fisk, and instead of Nenty it must be Nancy. English. To spite the king, who took the part of the weaker, he shall be murdered, presenting to him jewels, the father and the son going to vex the nobility, it shall be done to them as the Magi did in Persia. Not. This is a king who with his son taking the people's part against the nobility shall be killed, in presenting to him jewels, and he and his son shall be dealt with all as the Magi, that is the grandees of Persia used to do with their kings, whom they were wont to murder, or depose. English. For not consenting to the divorce, which afterwards shall be acknowledged unworthy, the king of the island shall be expelled by force, and another subrogated, who shall have no mark of a king. Not. This is plain concerning England and the late calamities thereof, when our gracious king for not consenting to the wicked factions of the Parliament then, and that have been acknowledged so since, was expelled by force, and an usurpator that had not the least sign of a king sat in his place. English. The remonstrances being made to the ungrateful people, at that time the army shall seize upon Antibes, in the river of Monaco they shall make their complaints, and at Freyas both of them shall take their share. Not. This signifieth that at the same time that the remonstrances shall be made to an ungrateful people, the army shall seize upon the town of Antibes, which is a sea town between France and Italy, and that there shall be great complaints at Monaco, which is another sea town near it, and at the place called Freyas, both parties shall either agree, or divide their shares. English. The captive prince vanquished in Italy shall pass by sea through Genoa to Marseilles, by great endeavors of foreign forces overcome, but that a barrel of honey shall save him from the fire. Not. A prince vanquished in Italy, and taken prisoner shall come through Genoa to Marseilles, where he shall be once more overcome by strangers, but that a barrel of honey shall save him from being burnt. This is the sense of the words as near as I can judge. The judicious reader may make what construction he pleaseth upon them. English. By Nebro to open the passage of Brazan, a great way off, el tego far moestra, in Pelagaux the wrong shall be done of the great lady sitting in the orchestra. Not. Here once more I lost my spectacles, and could not see through, therefore I had rather be silent than coin lies. I shall only tell you, that orchestra in Latinate is the seat wherein noble personages sit at the beholding of stage plays. English. The successor shall avenge his brother-in-law, shall hold by force the kingdom, upon pretence of revenge, that hindrance shall be killed, his dead blood ashamed, a long time shall Brittany hold with France. Not. This is plain enough of itself, without any interpretation. English. Charles V, and one great Hercules, shall open the temple with a warlike hand, one Calonne, Julius, and Ascan put back, Spain, the Keat eagle were never at such variance. Not. Charles V was the emperor, and that great Hercules was Henry II. King of France, whom he calleth Hercules, because he was king of France, and the author nameth often in his stanzas the kings of France Hercules or Ogmions, because that great captain of the antiquity left his name glorious in the Gauls, whence the ancient historians have given him the name of Hercules Gallicus. Henry II also was not only an Hercules by being king of France, but also a great Hercules, because of his warlike humor, and for his great feats in arms. To open the temple signifieth to make war, because the Romans in ancient time were wont to shut the temple of Janus in time of peace, and kept it open during the war. Caesar Augustus did shut that temple once in his time, which was never done before but twice, the first under Numa Pompilius, the second after the overcoming of Carthage. English. Second and third that make prime music, shall by the king be exalted to honor, by a fat one, and a lean one in consumption, a false report of Venus shall pull her down. Not. Notwithstanding the obscurity of this sense, and the bad connection of the words, we may perceive that by this stanza is meant, that a king having two mistresses shall exalt them in great honor, till by a report made by a fat woman and a lean one, that is in a consumption, that the said ladies prove unfaithful to the king, he will depress them as low as they were before. English. From pole mansell in a goat's den, hidden and taken, drawn out by the beard prisoner, led as a mastiff, by begurdens shall be brought near to Tarbes. Not. Here and in some other places of this work is to be observed, that the author doth sometimes put two towns instead of one, that he may distinguish it from others of the same name, as here he calleth Pole mansell to distinguish the town of St. Paul, which is 3 leagues from the Rose, over against the town of Pont Saint Esprit, from that which is in the lower parts of Provence. The sense therefore of this stanza is, that this begurdens, a proper name of a man, shall pull out another by the beard, that was hidden in a goat's den, and shall lead him captive as far as Tarbes, which is another town of Provence. English. Nephew in blood of the saint newly come, by the surname upholdeth vaults and covering, they shall be driven, put to death, and driven out naked. They shall change their red and black into green. Not. Here I confess to be at a loss, as may be a wiser man than I English. The Holy Empire shall come into Germany, the Ismaelites shall find open places, asses shall also come out of Carmania, taking their part, and covering the earth. Not. By the Ismaelites he meaneth the Turks, who brag to be descended from Ismael. Carmania is a province of Tiki, so that the sense of this stanza is, that there shall be a great invasion of the Turks into Germany, and that those of Carmania with their asses shall come to their help, and shall be in such numbers, as that the earth shall be covered with them. English. The great empire, every one would be of it, one above the rest shall obtain it, but his time and his reign shall last little, he may maintain himself 2 years in his shipping. Not. This is plain enough without interpretation. English. The cruel faction of Long Robe shall come and hide under the sharp daggers, seize upon Florence, the Duke and the Difflong. The discovery of it shall be by Count Ray Fellows. Not. This is the prognostication of a conspiracy against the Duke and city of Florence, by those of the long gown, which shall be discovered by Count Ray Fellows, that live in places without walls. English. A Frenchman who shall occupy an empire by war, shall be betrayed by his brother-in-law pupil, he shall be drawn by a rude prancing horse, for which fact his brother shall be long hated. Not. This foretelleth of a Frenchman, who shall by war obtain an empire or kingdom, and shall be betrayed by his brother-in-law pupil, whom afterwards he shall treacherously cause to mount a fierce prancing horse, who shall throw him down and drag him, for which the said king shall be hated long after. English. The kingly youngest son heated with burning lust, for to enjoy his cousin German, shall in woman's apparel go to the temple of Artemis, going, shall be murdered by unknown du Marne. Not. This is concerning the younger son of a king, who being extremely in love with his cousin German, shall disguise himself in a woman's apparel, and shall go so disguised to the temple of Artemide, that is of some church dedicated to the Virgin Mary, to meet her, but in going, shall be murdered by an unknown man named du Marne. English. After that the king of the south shall have talked of wars, the Harmotic Islands shall despise him, some good years gnawing one and plundering, and by tyranny shall change the price of the island. Not. The two first verses are concerning Philip II, King of Spain, who is called here the King of the South, whom after his vain and frustrated invasion of 88, the Harmotic Island, that is England, shall deride, and he after that shall have some good years, that is of peace, still pillaging and plundering his subjects, and shall change the price of England, that is, make it of a higher value, and more flourishing than ever it was before, as it did prove in Queen Elizabeth's time. English. A great assembly of people near the lake of Bourget will go and gather themselves about Montmelion, going beyond, they shall make an enterprise, upon Chambry, Maureen, and shall fight at St. Julien. Not. This lake of Bourget is in Savoy, as also Montmelion, Chambry, Maureen, and St. Julien. The meaning of it then is, that a great army shall be gathered about that lake, which shall go through Chambry, Maureen, and Montmelion, and shall fight at St. Julien. English. Cheerful love doth lay siege not far, the garrison shall be at St. Barber, Ursini, Hadria shall be sureties for the French, and many for fear shall go from the army to the Grisons. Not. The first two verses are inexplicable, the two last signify that there shall be an army of friends, with whom Hadria, that is Venice, and the Ursini the noblest family in Italy shall take part, insomuch, that many of the contrary parties shall run for fear to the Grisons, which is a nation dwelling in the Valtelline and other countries thereabout, between the Venetians and the Switzers. English. Of the first son a widow, an unhappy match, without any children, 2 islands at variance, before 18 an incompetent age, of the other lower shall be the agreement. Not. Although the words be intricate, nevertheless the sense is plain, concerning Francis II, King of France, who being married young, and before he was 18 years of age, to Mary Stuart Queen of Scotland, died presently after, and left her a widow, and also England and Scotland, which he calleth here 2 islands, at variance among themselves. Of the last verse the sense is very obscure, and hath relation to what did happen afterwards to the said Mary Queen of Scots and Dowager of France. English. The young man born to the kingdom of Brittany, whom his father dying shall have recommended, after his death London shall give him a topic, and shall ask the kingdom from his son. Not. This prophecy is plain, concerning His Majesty King Charles II, now reigning, who having been recommended by his dying father to his subjects, presently after his death they turned tail, and took the kingdom from him for a good while. English. Upon the frontier of Cassade and Charles, not far from the bottom of the valley of Villefranche there shall be music of lutes, great dancing and great company of people met together. Not. Cassade, Charles, and Villefranche are little towns in Provence, not far one from another, the rest is easy. English. The humane reign of an angelical brood, shall cause his reign to be in peace and union, shall make war, captive shutting it half up, he shall cause them to keep peace a great while. Not. This is only a foretelling of some gallant prince, who shall maintain his subjects in great peace and tranquillity. English. The time too good, too much of royal bounty, made and unmade, nimble, quick, negligence, fickle shall believe false o his loyal spouse, he shall be put to death for his good will. Not. This is concerning another king, who through his too much goodness, simplicity and negligence, shall make and unmake those about him, and being fickle, shall believe false reports, made concerning his own wife, and at last by his too much goodness, shall be put to death. English. At that time that a king shall be against his own, one born at Blois shall subdue the Ligures, Mamel, Corju and the Dalmatians, after that the shadow of the seven shall be to the king a New Year's gift and hobgoblins. Not. Blois is a city in France, Ligures are the Genoese, in Latine called Ligures. As for Mamel, I cannot tell what to make of it. Corjua is a city of Spain, and the Dalmatians is a nation near the Adriatic Sea, and under the Venetians. I leave the interpretation of the last verse to the ingenious reader. English. The shadow of the reign of Navarre not true, shall make the life of illegitimate chance, the uncertain allowance from Cambrai, King of Orleans shall give a lawful wall. Not. The reign or kingdom of Navarre is called not true, because the King of Spain doth possess it, and not the King of France, who is the lawful king thereof, as also in regard of the kings of France, and before of Jane of Albret, and Antony of Bourbon. This kingdom being not true in regard of the said ones, the title and quality is called here shadow. The author saith that the quality of the King of Navarre shall make the life of illegitimate chance, because after the death of Francis II Catherine of Medicis being not opposed in the regents by Antony of Bourbon King of Navarre, she was willing to gratify him in what she could. And because his brother Louis Prince of Condé had been condemned to death, and not executed, it was a fair occasion for her to shew the King of Navarre how much she did defer to him. Therefore 12 days after the death of King Francis, he was freed out of prison, and was admitted to justify himself under the King of Navarre's bail. Thus the shadow of the kingdom of Navarre not true, did cause the life of a prince to be saved, but that life was illegitimate, and that kingdom not true by chance, that is, by accident, because of the death of King Francis. Leaving off the third verse to be explained after the fourth, King, saith the author, shall give Orleans for legitimate, because Charles IX, who during the life of Francis II did bear the title of Duke of Orleans, did succeed his brother, thus the verse saith that Orleans shall give a king for legitimate. Now for the third verse, you must suppose that by the treaty at Madrid 1526, and after this by that of Cambrai, the King Francis I did part with the sovereignty of Flanders, and of all the Low Countries in favour of Charles the Emperor. It is of that uncertain allowance of Cambrai, of which the author talketh here, and saith, that in that time of the death of Francis II, that allowance shall be uncertain, because Francis I, having no power of himself to renounce the rights and dependence of the crown of France, the Parliament that was assembled then, would have made void that allowance without breaking the peace, declaring that the kings of France ought to preserve the right they had upon the Low Countries, and to require them again upon any occasion, and upon that France did not refuse the election which the Low Countries made of the Duke of Alençon for their sovereign prince and Duke of Brabant. English. The living receives his death from gold, infamous slut. Shall be of Saxony not the new elector, from Brunswick shall come a sign of love, falsely persuading the people that he is a seductor. Not. This prophecy is concerning an old elector of Saxony, who being in health before, shall die suddenly, being poisoned in a golden cup by a woman, whom he calleth here infamous slut. And that from Brunswick, a country adjacent to Saxony, shall come a messenger, upon pretence of love, who shall persuade the people that the said elector was a seducer. English. From Bour's city belonging to the Lady Garland, they shall impose by a set treason, the great prelate of Leon by formand, false pilgrims and ravishers destroyed. Not. I believe that there is a fault here in the impression, and that instead of Bourges it must be Bourges, which is a famous city in France, and capital of the province of Berry, for I do not know any town in Europe called Bourges. What he meaneth by the Lady Garland is unknown. I believe also that instead of Leon it should be Lyon, which is another famous city, and the first archbishopric of the said kingdom. For mand is a barbarous word, and I believe put in only to make up the rhyme, as he hath done in several other places. As much then as can be gathered out of the sense is this, that from that city Bourges, which usually is a dowry for a queen of France, which is called here Garland, shall a treason be hatched against the Archbishop of Lyon, which I suppose came to pass in the time of Henry III. When Peter of Pinac, Archbishop of the said Lyon, being accused by the deputies of Bourges for siding with the League, escaped narrowly to be killed, when the Duke of Guise and the Cardinal his brother were. Queen Catherine of Medicis the king's mother having then the said province and town of Bourges for her jointure. The last verse hath no relation to the three foremost, and hath its interpretation by itself, which is plain enough. English. From the utmost part of old Spain, going out of the extremities of Europe, he that troubled the travellers by the bridge of Lane, shall have his great troop defeated by another. Not. Every traveller knoweth that Castile, which is taken here for Spain, is divided into two parts, viz. Castilia la Vecchia, and Castilia la Nuova. Our author then saith that out of Castilia la Vecchia, which is situated at the further end of Europe on that side, shall come a band of men, who shall destroy the thieves that robbed and vexed the travellers by the bridge of Lane, which it seemeth was an infamous place for robbing. English. Garden of the World, near the new city, in the way of the digged mountains, shall be seized on, and thrown into the tub, being forced to drink sulphureous poisoned waters. Not. This word Garden of the World doth signify a particular person, seeing that this Garden of the World was seized on and poisoned in a tub of sulphureous water, in which he was thrown. The history may be this, that Nostradamus passing for a prophet and a great astrologer in his time, abundance of people came to him to know their fortunes, and chiefly the fathers to know that of their children, as did Mr. Lafnier, and Mr. Cotton, father of that renowned Jesuit of the same name, very like then that Mr. Dujardin having a son did ask Nostradamus what should become of him, and because his son was named Cosmos, which in Greek signifieth the world, he answered him with these four verses. Garden of the World, for Cosmos of the Garden, in his travels shall be taken hard by the new city, in a way that hath been digged between the mountains, and there shall be thrown into a tub of poisoned sulphureous water to cause him to die, being forced to drink that water which those rogues had prepared for him. Those that have learned the truth of this history may observe it here. This ought to have come to pass in the last age, seeing that the party mentioned was then born when this stanza was written, and this unhappy man being dead of a violent death, there is great likelihood that he was not above 40 years old. There is another difficulty, to know which is that new city, there being many of that name in Europe. Nevertheless, the more probable is, that there being many knights of Malta born in Provence, the native country of our author, it may be believed that by the new city he meaneth the new city of Malta called La Valette, hard by which there is paths and ways digged in the mountains, which mountains are as if it were a fence and a barricado against the sea, or else this Cosmos might have been taken by pirates of Algiers, and there in the new city of the Galette be put to death in the manner aforesaid. English. The Mise by day in the land of Luxembourg shall discover Saturn, and 3 in the Lerne, mountain and plain, town, city, and country town, a Lorraine flood, treason by a great hern. Not. The Mise is a river that runneth through a part of Lorraine and Luxembourg. As for the words Lerne and Hern, I do not understand them, neither do I think they are to be found in all the French language, both obsolete and modern. All what I can gather out of this is, that a great overflowing of the river Mise shall be both in Luxembourg and Lorraine, insomuch that 3 leaden mines, which is meant here by Saturn, shall be discovered, and after that, a great treason shall happen in the said Lorraine. Not. The sense of this is, that the Lower Lorraine and Germany being united together, shall have war with the other 3 nations, of Picards, Normans, and Manceaux, which having besieged a town, shall constrain the Lorrainers and Low Germans, to unite themselves with the cantons of Switzerland. English. In the place where Lay and Selda are united, shall the nuptials be, that were long a-doing. In the place of Antwerp, where they draw the grape, the young unspotted will comfort the old age. Not. There is fault in the impression, for instead of lay it must be Lys, which is a river that runneth through Flanders, and dischargeth itself into the Schelde, which is the river that passeth at Antwerp. The sense therefore of this prophecy is, that in the place where the river of Lys joineth with the Schelde, there shall the nuptials be consummated that were long a-doing, and the place of Antwerp, where they unload the wines, there shall a young unspotted lady marry, and comfort an old man. English. The 3 concubines shall fight one with another afar off, the greatest less shall remain watching, the great sullen shall be no more their patron, and shall call it fire, pelt, white, root. Not. This prophecy is concerning the Turkish Empire, where 3 of the great Turks' concubines, which in Latine are called palaces, shall make war one against another, the great Turk himself favoring neither party. English. Born in this world from a stolen concubine, set up at 2 heights by the sad news, shall be taken prisoner among the enemies, and brought to Malines and Bruxelles. Not. This is concerning some lady of quality, born of a concubine, who shall be set up by reason of some sad news that shall be brought, and afterwards shall be taken prisoner, and carried to Malines and Bruxelles, 2 cities of the Low Countries. English. The unhappy nuptials shall be celebrated, with great joy, but the end shall be unhappy, husband and mother shall scorn knower, the 5 dead, and knower more pitiful. Not. If by 5 we understand the Admiral of Chastelain, and by knower, Queen Margaret of Valois, the rest will be easy. For in the year 1572, a match was made between Henry IV, then King of Navarre, chief of the Protestant party, and Margaret of Valois, sister to Charles IX. To this wedding were the chief of the Protestant party invited, who were there massacred, and among the rest Gaspard of Coligny, Lord of Chastelain, and Admiral of France, whom he calleth here 5. And when he saith, that husband and mother shall scorn knower, he sheweth the slight opinion and regard that the Queen Mother had for her daughter, and Henry IV for his wife, whom he after repudiated. English. Royal prelate bowing himself too much, a great flood of blood shall come out of his mouth, the English reign by rain respite, a great while dead, alive in Tunis like a log. Not. A prelate is a man of eminent dignity in the church. The royal prelate must be a churchman of the royal blood, who bowing himself too much, shall fall into an hemorrhage or flux of blood at his mouth. The 3rd verse signifieth, that the kingdom of England shall be relieved from some distress by another kingdom or prince that had been a slave a great while at Tunis, and lying there, dead alive like a log of wood. English. The exalted shall not know his scepter, he shall put to shame the young children of the greatest, never was one more dirty and cruel, he shall banish to black death their spouses. Not. This is concerning a great tyrant, who being exalted to the dignity of a king, shall not know how to govern, but shall slight and put to shame the children of the greatest nobility, and shall banish their wives out of the land. This hath a relation to the late tyrant Cromwell. English. In the time of mourning, when the monarch Selin shall make war against the young Emathian, France shall quake, the ship shall be in danger, Phocens shall be attempted, the business shall be in the west. Not. You must observe here, that by Emathian the author meaneth the king of France, as he doth in many other places, and by Selin he meaneth the great Turk, because such was the name of him that lived in his time. This being presupposed, the meaning of this is, that the great Turk shall fight against the king of France, and shall attempt Phocens, which is Marseilles, as being a colony of the old Phocenses in Grecia, which shall cause all France to quake, and the ship to be in danger, which is Paris. Who beareth a ship for its arms? English. In lines 5 and 20 of a breadth 5 citizens Germans, Bressans, Latines, under noblemen shall conduct a long train, and shall be discovered by the barking of mastiffs. Not. The Marshal of Saint Andre, governor of Lyon being absent, the Protestants undertook the taking of it, at the solicitation of some principal lords at court, among whom were named the Prince of Condé, and the Vidame of Chartres, Francis of Vendosme, 9 of the order. The abbot of Savigny, who did supply the place of the governor, and was named Antony of Albon, since that Archbishop of Arles, having discovered this conspiracy, went to surprise the undertakers, but as he was going upon the night of the 5 of September, he met with some of the confederates upon the bridge of Saône, which made him retreat with some loss. The next day, having gathered more forces, he took 3 of them that were strangers and young, the rest escaping. Those 3 were hanged the next Saturday, which was the 7th of that month. The marshal being come to town, there was execution made upon some of the inhabitants, to the number of 4 that were hanged. After that there were informations made concerning the authors and abettors of the said conspiracy, and many other citizens and strangers were put to prison, and besides them the vidame of Chartres, who was carried to Paris, and put into the Bastille, and after that in the Tournelles, where he died before his process was ended, the December 23rd, 1560. It is what our author saith in this stanza. In the first verse he saith, that there were 25 of a breadth, of whose 25 there was 5 citizens of the town, and the rest were Germans, Bressans and Italians. Of these citizens 4 were hanged, and 3 of the strangers. Those 25 undertakers, of which the author saith, that under noblemen they shall conduct a long train, that is, that under the support and favour of many noblemen, they would undertake a thing that should not end so soon as it proved afterwards, for although this enterprise did fail, yet was the beginning of horrid combustions that followed afterwards. This enterprise at Seamouth was discovered by barking of mastiffs. The apology for the city of Lyon treateth at large of this, and nameth all those conspirators, who for the most part were of Germany and Geneva. English. I bewail Nice, Monaco, Pisa, Genoa, Savona, Siena, Capua, Medina, Malta, upon them blood and sword for a New Year's gift, fire, earthquake, water, unhappy Nolty. Anat. All these cities are situated by the Mediterranean Sea, and most of them upon that part of it, which is called the river of Genoa, and are threatened here by all the plagues above mentioned. As for the word Nolty, it is a barbarous one, forced here to make up the rhyme in French. English. Beda, Vienna, Camor, Sacrabins, shall endeavour to deliver Pannon to the barbarians, by pike and fire, extraordinary violence. The conspirators discovered by a matron. Anat. It seemeth that there will be a conspiracy of some men out of all the above-mentioned cities, to surrender Hungary, which in Latinate is called Pannonia, to the Great Turk, but that conspiracy shall be discovered by a matron, that is, a grave ancient woman. English. Near Sorbonne, to invade Hungary, the herald of Buddha shall come to give them notice of it, chief Byzantin, Solon of Sclavonia, shall come to turn them to the Arabian religion. Anat. This seemeth to have a relation to the precedent, and that near that place he calleth Sorbonne, preparations shall be made to invade Hungary, but they shall have notice of it by some body of Buddha. He that is called here chief Byzantin, is the Great Turk or his Grand Vizier, who hath his abode in Constantinople, anciently called Byzantium. English. Sidron, Ragus, the city of Saint Hieron, shall make green again the physical help, the king's son dead, by the death of 2 herons, Arabia and Hungary shall go the same way. Anat. The meaning of this is, that when those 3 cities named in the first verse shall have need of succors, and that a king's son shall die in flying 2 herons, then shall Arabia and Hungary be under the same master. English. Weep Milan, weep Lux, and Florence, when the great Duke shall go upon the chariot, to change the siege near Venice he goeth about, when Cologne shall change at Rome. Anat. This prophecy seemeth to portend the change of the see of Rome in some place near to Venice, and this is to happen when the great Duke of Tuscany shall ascend upon a triumphant chariot, and that the house of Cologne, which is the more powerful in Rome, shall take his part. English. O great Rome, thy ruin draweth near, not of thy walls, of thy blood and substance, the sharp by letters shall make so horrid a notch, sharp iron thrust in all to the haft. Anat. This is a confirmation of the foregoing prophecy, by which it is said that the destruction of Rome shall not be in her walls, blood or substance, but only by letters or doctrine that shall put quite down the Roman religion. English. The chief of London by reign of America, the island of Scotland shall catch thee by a frost, king and reb. Shall have so false an antichrist, as will put them all together by the ears. Anat. I conceive this prophecy can be appropriated to no body better than Ali. Cromwell, who is called here the Chief of London by reign of America, that is, by reign of confusion, whose projects and treasons were all brought to naught by the victorious Mars of the ever-renowned General Monk, who came with his army from Scotland to London in the winter time, he is called also a false Antichrist, because he was an enemy to King and Reb. That is Respublica or Commonwealth. English. The earthquake shall be so great in the month of May, Saturn, Caper, Jupiter, Mercury in the Bull, Venus also, Cancer, Mars and Nanai, then shall fall hail bigger than an eggy. Anat. The meaning is, that when all these celestial bodies shall be so disposed, that there will be a fearful earthquake and hail. English. The fleet shall stand before the city, then shall go away for a little while, and then shall take a great troop of citizens on land, fleet shall come back and recover a great deal. Anat. It seemeth here he speaketh of two fleets, one of which shall stand a little while before a town, and carry a great many citizens away, but that the other fleet shall come in the meantime, and redeem them. English. The bright actions of new old exalted, shall be so great through the south and north, by his own sister great forces shall be raised, running away he shall be murdered near the bush of Ambelen. Anat. The question here is, whether this neuf view in French or new old in English be the proper name of a man, or be a metaphor, to express a young man of an ancient family. When the reader hath satisfied himself upon that, the rest is easy enough. English. The eye by the object shall make such an excrescency, because so much, and so burning shall fall the snow, the field watered shall come to decay insomuch that the premat shall fall down at reach. Anat. All this is nothing but an extraordinary great snow that shall fall about Reggio, a city of Italy, whereby the fields shall be drowned and fall to decay, insomuch that the chief men, called here primates, shall fall to poverty. English. The earth and the air shall freeze with so much water, when they shall come to worship Thursday, that which shall be never, was so fair, from the four parts they shall come to honor him. Anat. This signifieth an exceeding great frost, which shall happen on a holy Thursday, where the ground and sky shall be so clear, that men may come from the four parts, viz. of the earth, without trouble for to worship. English. In the year 1999, and 7 months, from heaven a great terrible king, to raise again the great king of Angelism, before and after, Mars shall reign luckily. Anat. He that is called here king of Angelism was Francis the I, as gallant a prince as ever France had, who before he was king went by the title of Duke of Angelism. The rest is easy. English. The time present, together with the past, shall be judged by a great jovialist. The world shall at last be weary of him, and he shall be thought unfaithful by the canon law clergy. Anat. This prophecy concerneth merely Francis Rabelais, who is the greatest jovialist, that is, merry man that ever was, and did so lash and censure the abuses of every profession, and chiefly of the clergy, that to this very day he goeth among them for an atheist, and a profaner of sacred and civil things. English. The year of the great number 7 being past, shall be seen at that time the sports of Hecatomb, not far from the great age 1000, that the buried shall come out of their graves. Anat. Hecatomb signifieth a sacrifice, wherein 100 beasts were killed. The sense therefore is this, that when the year 1700 is past, that such sport of Hecatomb shall be seen again, not far from the 6th millenary, when the day shall rise, for it is a common opinion among the learned, that as God created the world in 6 days, and rested the 7th, so when the world hath lasted 6,000 years, for 1,000 years before God are as one day, there shall be an eternal Sabbath and a resurrection, both of the just and unjust. English. So long expected shall never come into Europe, in Asia shall appear one come forth of the line of the great Hermes, and shall grow above all the kings in the east. Anat. All is plain, but only this, whether he taketh Hermes as a king of Egypt, or as the father of the Hermetic philosophers. English. The great Senate will decree a pomp, to one who after shall be vanquished and expelled, the goods of his partners shall be publicly sold, and the enemy shall be driven away. Anat. What Senate and particular men he meaneth, is the only difficulty in this. English. 30 Associated of the order of Corettes, banished, their goods shall be given to their adversaries, all their good deeds shall be imputed to them as crimes, the fleet scattered, they shall fall into the hands of pirates. Not. I could not find any man or author that knew what is meant here by Corettes, which is only the difficulty of this stanza. English. Sudden joy shall turn into a sudden sadness, at Rome to the embraced graces, mourning, cries, weeping, tears, blood, excellent joy, contrary troops surprised and carried away. Not. There is nothing difficult here, but what he meaneth by embraced graces, for my part one believe them some new married couples, who in the middle of their jollity shall fall into these disasters. English. The old ways shall be made all fair, there shall be a passage to Memphis summentries, the great Mercury of Hercules flower de luce, making the earth, the sea, and the countries to quake. Not. This word summontres, being altogether barbarous, is the reason that neither sense nor construction can be made of all these words. English. In the great reign, of the great reign reigning, by force of arms the great brass gates, he shall cause to be open, the king being joined with the duke, haven demolished, ship sunk on a fair day. Not. The words and the sense are plain, though the parties be unknown. English. A treasure put in a temple by Hesperian citizens, in the same hid in a secret place, the hungry bonds shall cause the temple to be open, and take again and ravish, a fearful prey in the middle. Not. This is concerning a treasure hid by Spaniards, called here Hesperian citizens, in a church, which the people of a town being poor, and almost starved, caused to be open, and did ransack it, but in the middle of it they found a strange prey, but what it was God knows. English. Cries, weeping, tears, shall come with daggers, with a false seeming they shall give the last assault, set round about they shall plant deep, beaten back alive, and murdered upon a sudden. Not. This seemeth to have a relation to the Scaleto of Geneva, of which you shall have a full account in the 69th stanza of the 12th century. English. There shall no sign of battle be given, they shall be compelled to come out of the park, round about gasp shall be known the ensign, that shall cause all his own to be put to death. Not. This prophecy was fulfilled in the year 1556. By the Marshal of Brissac in Piedmont, when he took the town of Vignal by assault, where 1,200 Neapolitans were put to the sword, who were called the Braves of Naples, because they were all very gallantly habited, and the governor being wounded, cast himself desperately into a well, whence the marshal caused him to be taken up, and to be cured of his wounds.